everybody. My name is Ryan Floyd. This is my video podcast, Ask a VC, and I'm a managing director at Storm Ventures. We're an early stage B2B SaaS venture fund, and I'm here talking to Dominique Levin, who's co-CEO of Winning by Design. Winning by Design focuses on just helping companies, early stage companies, navigate their go-to-market strategy, sales and marketing, and really how to scale to get to the next level. In addition to a lot of our portfolio companies, they also work with a lot of large companies like Adobe and others as well. So we had a great conversation last time on how to generate leads. We had so much to talk about, we thought it made sense to do another segment on really how to optimize those leads and how to generate more sales. So let's get into it. So last time, Dominic, we talked about how to generate more leads. And we got into some of the strategy, but there seems to be so much more to unpack really about how to optimize your lead gen strategy and some techniques and tips. Because if you think about the situation where I'm a founder and I've got some leads, I've got some initial things starting to happen, but I'm just struggling on really trying to figure out, now what do I do to really start to get some scale? I don't want to spend millions and millions of dollars to try and get some customers. Let's start to kind of think through that.
Yeah, so first of all, not all leads are created equal, right? You know, there's some companies where out of 100 leads, these turn into one deal, right? So a company needs 100 leads to generate one deal. Other companies, and this is definitely best in class, but there are companies out there that manage to turn 1 out of 5 leads, you know, into a sale.
Yeah, 20%, that's amazing.
20 times.
Yeah.
20 times better, right? So this is amazing because this is saving you a huge amount of sales resources, right? So think about it. With one salesperson, I can do basically 20 times more deals this way, right? So this is not peanuts. There's a lot at stake, and not just generating more leads, but we really need to talk about how do I generate better leads and what does a good lead look like?
Right. How do I generate better leads? There's so much to talk about here. So the first thing I'd say is that, you know, it's a big thing for me. I've done video on sales efficiency, and across all of our companies, it's so important to be thinking about sales and marketing really integrated, because you're right, all leads are not created equally, and activity on the marketing side and meeting setup doesn't necessarily translate to results.
Right.
I could be having all these great meetings, but if it's not converting into sales, then it's wasted effort. Right. And what's more, we find sometimes that in our companies, you know, sales folks are going to work the leads that they have, and if they're not good leads for whatever reason, they're not going to get anything to convert, because we all only have so many hours in our day that we can focus on something. So you need to focus all of your attention on driving better leads. So let's start with that. So what are some of the things you'd first start to unpack to how to get at those better leads?
Right, so the first question to ask is actually, what is a good customer? Because I would take what you just said one step further. It's not just sales, right, that might suffer if your lead is bad. Let's say that sales closes a lead and it turns out to be a bad customer. What's a bad customer? A bad customer is a customer that leaves, a customer that wasn't a good fit for your solution, that tells 20 of their friends that your solution is bad, right? So good customers are customers that, you know, achieve impact for who you truly solve a problem, and that as a result stay with you for a long time and buy more from you, right? So our retention is high, expansion is high. So those are good customers. And now I want to go all the way back to the beginning, right? Like, how do I find more
that look like that? Yeah, so we talked about lookalikes in the last video. And so, but we just kind of touched on it briefly. So what are the, so this is, some people call the ideal customer profile, right?
Exactly.
This lookalike. So what are the components of this ideal customer profile? What are some things that I should be looking for in terms of, you know, I want all my customers to be good customers. What are the aspects that can help me predict? What do you look for?
Well, first of all, I cannot emphasize, you know, doing this work up front enough, right? So this ideal customer profile and thinking about what good customers are. There's a famous quote, often misattributed to Lincoln. No one knows where it really came from, but give me 6 hours to chop down a tree. I'm going to spend the first 4 sharpening my axe, right? That's what we're doing here. Before we go out and spend a bunch of money on marketing or hire a bunch of salespeople, let's get very clear on what is my ideal customer profile and what are good customers that will retain and convert and buy from me look like.
Right.
Now there's 2 elements to that. One is, who is a good fit for me, right? Second, so that is, who do I sell to? The second element, which we'll talk about separately, is when do I sell to these customers?
So when you say the who, it's the buyer.
The buyer.
Who's
well, the company and the buyer, but that's a good point, right? So there's two elements to the who. What companies do I sell to?
Right.
And what personas or people, roles within that company would be the right person to start a conversation with.
Right. So like, just to sort of make the point, if I'm selling a CRM tool, I probably am not going to be selling that to the CEO or the CFO, right? Versus if I'm selling something that's maybe much more strategic, let's say, compliance, risk, board management, that's probably a sale to a CFO. And so really trying to be thoughtful about who's the target buyer is critical. Because I think the tendency that we all have is to go as high as we can in an organization to sell, right?
Right.
But if that's not the buyer, it may not be a good use of your time if that.
Yeah, you just sort of opened a whole can of worms, right? Because
well, that's the idea.
All of these people are involved in a sale.
Right.
Right? There's at least 5 people, if not more, involved in the sale. And they each have a role to play. But since we're focused on marketing is about starting a conversation. So we're trying to find the person in the company that's the right person to start this conversation with. Sometimes we call this the initiator. Sometimes it can be and eventually should lead to a conversation with the champion, right? Someone who is going to sort of drive this purchase process within their company, which may be a very different person than what we call the decision maker, right? The person that ultimately has the authority to allocate the budget and to sign your purchase order. But we're looking to start a conversation with the not with the decision maker, with the champion.
The champion.
The
right.
champion or the initiator.
Well, I think that's an important point too.
No,
The
it's very
champion
important.
isn't always the decision maker.
Right. Those are two different people.
Right.
And to your point, right, that CFO or that CEO may not be the best person to initiate a conversation with. I do want that person to be involved and must have that person involved in the sales process. But again, from a marketing point of view, I'm looking to initiate a conversation with my champion. Could be a director, could be a manager, could be a VP, but it depends.
Right. So this is the who in terms of the person. How about the who in terms of the company? What are some attributes you look for? Company, one obvious one is it a SMB? Is it mid-stage? Is it a large enterprise? Right, they have very different behaviors in terms of what they're looking for. What are some other attributes of the type of company?
Let me answer that question with a story. So we were working with this project management company, and first they discovered that there were certain verticals like finance and insurance that were more likely to buy from them. When I say more likely, I mean that instead of 1%, 4 or 8% of leads would turn into deals. So that's great, right? That's a 4 to 8 times improvement. But then they found if they go one layer deeper and they start looking at which of these finance and insurance companies have multiple offices, right? Because the more offices, the more likely I need some project management software to coordinate the efforts amongst offices. So now they went from 8% to 22% of leads turning into deals by looking at that and a couple other factors.
Wow.
Now, the cool thing is that this is information you can actually find out before you ever market or sell to these people, right? You can go online and figure out how many offices.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to do that yourself, because now ideally you take, all finance and insurance companies you might sell to, might be 20,000 or whatever the case may be, and you enrich that information in your database with information about how many offices does each of them have.
Right.
So you can send that off to business process outsourcing, maybe in the Philippines, $6 an hour, whatever it is. And within a couple days, you'll probably a couple $1,000s later have this prioritized list of companies that are more likely to buy from you than others.
Right. Sharpening the axe.
Sharpening the axe.
Great example. Because it just makes you so much more efficient then in terms of the resources that you're focused on actually trying to solve those problems, because you've just, reduced the number of, difficult customers, maybe not fit customers. Right. You've weeded them out.
And you can do it in 2 ways, right? Either you can take the inbound that you've gotten and put this filter through it, right? Say, okay, before I hand this to sales, let me prioritize this for them. Right? Because sales is really where you're spending time, right? So as marketing, I might get general bucket of leads, that's fine, but I can now apply this filter, how many offices do they have, prioritize for sales. Or I can go outbound, right? I can say, okay, let me start with a list of companies that have a lot of offices and maybe send them a cool little gift. Maybe Sendoso can help here and send them some present.
I mean, if I'm trying to benchmark, if I told you I had 20% lead to opportunity conversion rate? Would you say that's good? How do you think about it opportunity? Do you think about ultimately all the way to close?
Both.
How do you think about that?
Yeah, I think about it both. I mean, sometimes we find that people define opportunities differently. So whenever I see a new company, I definitely sort of do a sanity check on lead, right, all the way to close. And there, you start at about 1%, would be run of the mill. You get to 4 to 8%, you're doing quite well. And then again, the outliers I mentioned might be lead to close, right? Maybe 20%.
Right.
If you say lead to opportunity, we're talking about indeed turning 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 leads into a pipeline opportunity would be sort of benchmark.
Right, and it probably makes a big difference too about how much sales resource you're spending on each of those opportunities. So if you're spending relatively small amount of sales resource, you can afford to have a lower conversion rate. Whereas if you're having a higher, then you need to be able to have a better conversion rate.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So okay, so in terms of the other things that you can sort of tune the engine to sort of take better advantage to really segment the leads. We talked about the who.
Yep.
Let's talk about kind of the time component of all of this, because it's real. I think people think that this customer I've got a lookalike. I know they have the same problem, but I just can't get them to respond to me.
They're perfect,
They're
right?
perfect.
So what's going on? There could be
Right.
100 things
Right.
going on. Think
Right.
about it, right? Human life. Maybe this person is on maternity leave or paternity leave. Maybe they're in the middle of a merger that you don't know about. Maybe they're preparing for an IPO. Maybe you're in the middle of deploying some huge new e-commerce system or CRM system, right? There could be 100 reasons why they're a perfect fit, but just isn't the right time to have this conversation with them.
Right. So how do you
How do you know?
How do you know?
How do you know,
So what do you
right?
so what do you do? Do you just kind of keep like hammering them with emails and calls? Like how do you sort of think about guiding? So if I have identified it's the right person, it's the right company, they've got, for the project management example, they've got lots of offices, but I just can't get them to respond. What do I do?
So I would say, so yes, you do start by tickling them basically, right? I have this list and I'm going to try and email them. I try and touch them. That's fine. And again, especially as marketing, I can do that at scale, right? One email can go to 10 people or 10,000 people. It's the same push of a button. But the biggest mistake people make is that they don't leverage the information that comes back to prioritize their leads, right? So behavioral data. I, as a prospect, send signals to you. If I'm not responding to your emails, I'm not clicking on any of those links, or I'm never visiting your website, that tells you something, right? That is a hint. It is not a guarantee that it's not the right time for me. But let's flip this. If you have 10 companies and 9 of them have never been on your website, but this one VP was on your website today, like this morning, right? These 10 leads are not created equal. And make sure that your sales team knows which of the 10 leads has interacted with your marketing campaigns, visited your website before. I can't tell you how often this doesn't happen. And that it is some sales VP or sales director or sales executives that decides on their own, let's see, I've sold to Disney before. Let me take this Disney lead. That looks really good. As opposed to, wait, but Fox News was on your website this morning.
Right.
Call Fox News first. Not Disney.
Right. Because even though in that example, I think it's a perfect example. I know Disney. I know they're a perfect customer. They should be. They meet all my criteria, right? So I'm just going to brute force it, and I'm going to go spend my time. But this is my point I was trying to make about the time spent. Because if I'm trying to chase down the Disney, when really I should be going after Fox, right?
That's right.
It's not a good use of resources.
In the end, it's a numbers game,
Yeah.
right? I mean, each customer has a certain likelihood to buy.
Right.
So it's not absolute, it's not black and white. But in this case, Fox statistically just has a higher likelihood to buy than Disney.
Right.
And so spend your time there first.
So yeah, so and no brute forcing. Like really try to sharpen the axe. I love that. The back to sharpening the axe and really trying to optimize at the top of the funnel. It's amazing the impact that can have. I mean, when you really kind of do out the numbers at scale, right? I mean, small tweaks really have a really big impact at the beginning if you're really kind of thoughtful about it.
Yeah, so as a team, I would say really focus. Like, there's a lot of metrics you should use to measure your business, but there's one metric that I think is more important than others, and it's basically conversion rates. And it's not just, typically companies think about close rates, how many opportunities turn into a deal,
Yep.
but it's really stage to stage, right? How many leads turn into opportunities, how many opportunities turn into deals, and don't stop there. How many deals, right, turn into renew with me, how many of them expand. The truth is that if you optimize just a little bit on each of those, you can double your revenue, right? So think about it. There's 7 sort of moments, in the customer life cycle. There's 7 little tweaks that I'm going to make.
Right.
And I'm going to improve them each by just a little bit. From 20% close rate, I do maybe 22% close rate. It's not a big change, right?
Right.
20, 22, I mean, what's the difference, Ryan, right? It's like nothing. Okay. There's a little math for you, but 1.1 to the power of 7, just stick it into your phone. You will see that you've just doubled your revenue without adding a single lead.
Right.
Or adding a single salesperson
Right.
for
You've
that
just been
matter,
more
right?
efficient. Yeah.
Yeah. So thinking
Sharpen
about
the axe.
efficiency, sharpening the axe, it starts with picking who you sell to, then leverage buying signals that people give by visiting your website, clicking on your links, right? To pick when to speak to someone. And then just do a little bit better along the way, right? Arm your sales team with a little bit better customer stories, get people up and running a little bit faster, etc. It's ultimately flows through the entire customer
Right.
life cycle.
And it's the whole journey. That's your point that you really got
Yes.
to be watching and optimizing.
Yes.
I think you made a great point too. It doesn't end with the deal. So let's
No.
talk about that for a minute.
Yes.
Because I think it's not counterintuitive. Historically, I think, sales has thought, well, I close a deal. Like that's all that really matters.
Right.
But in the world of SaaS, that's not really what it's about, because you have to continually deliver value. And if you're not expanding, I think, with your customer base, I think it's likely your customer base is going to churn. Because you really should be delivering value and making your customers happy. And if you're doing your job right, then those customers are going to naturally expand. And so, yeah, I mean, if you look at all the way through to expansion, sometimes you find out really interesting things about what you thought was an ideal customer, but it turns out they're not, right?
That's right, yeah. So if you get more and more customers that end up churning, it's worse than feeling a leaky bucket, right? Because every customer that churns might tell 20 of their buddies, that they had a bad experience. So
Right.
you get sort of bad word of mouth, right? So we're really trying to find good customers, but also it points to that the role of marketing, and when we talk about leads, it's leads for new logos, but marketing should really also help create leads and opportunities within the existing customer base, right? I mean, 70 to 90% of revenue comes from existing customers, and some of it is natural, right? It's an expansion, like, oh, I add another seat, so that's easy. I sell another seat to the same person that I sold, my first 10 seats to, whatever the case
Right.
may be. But sometimes it's more complicated than that, right? Sometimes I might have sold to one division of a company, but that company has 10 more divisions I could be selling to. Or sometimes I might have sold to marketing, but I could also be selling to HR. That is a non-trivial jump, right? You can't necessarily expect that your customer success team or your sales team will do that on their own, right?
Right.
Really, I mean, I see people just not investing enough in marketing to existing customers to try and create those expansion leads.
Right.
Which, by the way, convert into deals a lot better than any new customer ever would.
Right. I mean, that base of revenue is really the core. That's what you have to build off of, your existing customer base, right? I mean, that fuels everything. I mean, to your point, it's like that churn it is just so gut-wrenching, because if you think about it, you've spent all this time getting leads, right? And you've now optimized them and you've got them into opportunities. You've focused them on sales, you've onboarded them, and then to lose them at some point, I mean, it's just
hugely expensive, right?
Yeah.
And I think you made a point in one of your other videos that, people who are not expanding will likely churn, right?
Yeah.
You're always looking to add more value, to the relationship. And a healthy customer relationship is one where you're continuing to deepen the partnership, you continue to uncover together more problems you can solve, and you deliver more value.
Yeah, and there's just a misconception that it ends at the deal. I think it's just so important for SaaS companies to realize that it's just this, it's really about providing value really long term. I think, there's probably lots more to talk about, but one thing that'd be great to maybe talk about here as a follow-on would just be onboarding, and to think about, how to maybe, once you've passed that deal, how do you like start to make these customers successful? Thank you. I hope you all enjoyed this video on really how to optimize and tune your leads. Thank you, Dominique, for joining me. If you did like the video, please subscribe down below. Leave us comments. We would love to answer some comments. Leave suggestions about what you'd like to hear in the future. And look forward to seeing you next time.